Welcome to our gambling addiction workshop. As we begin to unwrap this package, first I want to give you an overview of what we're going to be covering. So we'll have modules for you on this website, and at the beginning of each one there will be one of these introductory videos which has both core information and also instructions for you. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the old school view of gambling as a behavioral compulsion. Really, until recently, the American Psychological Association saw it as simply that. But nowadays, we see that it's both a serious problem and an addiction. Up till 1996, the texts were telling us that it was just a compulsive behavior. But more and more, now that we have enhanced neurological research, specifically the PET scans, we see that indeed, just as with cocaine, the same part of the brain lights up for gambling addicts as well. Thus, we begin to see that teens are particularly at risk because from age 11 to 14, our brains add a whole slew of new neurons. And these are unorganized neurons. These are neurons that begin to organize, or what we call prune, from the back of the head to the front. And that last place to prune is the part that we call the prefrontal cortex, where judgment are made, where we have our sense of right and wrong. That seat of judgment then is the last place that develops after our brain increases by 1/3 from 11 to 14. And then we've got from 14 to 25 or so before that brain development is complete. So no wonder as teenagers we make errors of judgment. We'll also look at some of the risks that come with genetics, such as if you have a parent addict, you are 50% more likely to become addicted yourself. And then we'll look at some of the experiential factors, what we call today risk and protective factors. Then we'll move on to assessment. And we'll see that early assessment or pre-screening screenings were simply asking the simple question, are you addicted? And we'll go into some very more detailed instruments for assessing degree of addiction. Then we'll move into treatment. And treatment is developing rapidly, and yet that development is not complete as we look for more and more best practice, evidence-based treatments for gambling addiction. So it was just this year that Montana recognized that we will be looking at gambling now as an addiction, just like a drug addiction. You'll also find in this first section your syllabus, which identifies our course objectives, to identify and classify gambling and gaming addictions, to be able to create assessment summaries and master treatment plans, to then form treatment strategies, and also to demonstrate the principles of documentation. We have a large number of texts that we have considered and have included portions of in this course. The most important one, if you're thinking about buying one, is the text, "Why Can't I Stop?" from Johns Hopkins University Press, just April of this year, by Doctors Grant, Odlog, and Chamberlain. So if you're going to buy a book, buy the most recent and the best that looks at all sorts of behavioral addictions, but really documents well the gambling addiction issues we've already touched on briefly. Other ones that we've used and you'll find materials for on our class website are the Foundations of Addictions Counseling, Gambling and Gaming Addictions by Mark Griffiths, a key name in gambling addiction. Another one which is a bit autobiographical, All Bets Are Off, Losers, Liars, and Recovering from Gambling Addiction by the Wexlers. And then also Gambling Addiction, The Ultimate Guide to Gambling Addiction Recovery, How to Finally Overcome Gambling Addiction and Problem Gambling Forever, The Gambling Addiction Cure, The Taking Back Your Life, Women and Problem Gambling, which we will cover in the last module, a new book called Rewired, which is self-help tools to rewire yourself, as well as several articles from the internet that are so recent they have not been published. You'll also find in this section a guide for taking classes online in general, which will be specifically helpful for this class. There will be tips in there for you how to survive and thrive in these classes. There you'll see a section with some basics, with 5 main tips, with information for forming your strategies. You want to hear those 5 tips? Okay. So the first one is to get organized, and there are several suggestions there. The next one is to finish your posts on the website early, get your questions in, to try not to procrastinate, get yourself a schedule, and then get ahead of schedule for those unforeseen interruptions. Also some things in regard to strategies for communicating with me, and some specific things in the section under organization, which will help you keep a calendar and stay on track. There's also a student success contract at the end of that, as well as some information about getting your grades. That said, we are then ready to go ahead and have you watch the first video. So we have for you an introductory video that's marked on the website. It's actually a little webinar for you that will give you an overview circa 2014.